the main idea of Sejima was, together with Ryu and Nishizawa and Sana, to design a space. And, you know, quoting Andrea Branzi, one could call this space a no-stop city, because you've got this no-stop city idea that it's sort of all over, and it's every couple of square meters you have another monitor and screen and chair. And it was Sejima and Nishizawa's idea to do this very, very simple, to always have a one-to-one situation, as my interviews are these one-to-one, to sort of recreate this intimacy. No? So there's the chair they chose, which is a chair they designed, they drew, and at the same time these little tables, and the little tables are basically the basis of the chair, just with an added plate. So it becomes a very subtle and somehow also light. As always with them, there is this lightness, no? Because usually when you have monitors in an exhibition, it's not only deadly boring, but it's also very heavy, and that is avoided here. So I was very thrilled also by them doing the exhibition design for my space, because it's something they had done once before in 2000 for my Rumor City exhibition in Tokyo, and it was always my dream that that would happen again, because it was such an amazing experience to work. And then obviously we worked with them on other things. We did Julia Peyton-Johnson and I invited them to do the pavilion at the Serpentine last year, but that is the second collaboration with them on an exhibition design. To show also the archive of the Serpentine marathons, which are my 24-hour non-stop interviews. But then the idea was really to produce something in Venice which would produce a new reality, so that it wouldn't be kind of like just the past, but that we also look in the future. And we discussed with Katsuo, and the idea came then that we could maybe do a portrait of the exhibition by me interviewing every single participant in the show, so 47 participants, and it goes from all the architects to filmmakers, Sejima invited like Wim Wenders, or artists like Carrie Swin Evans, and to have these 47 interviews as a polyphony in the space, you know, and at the same time during the exhibition, so visitors can come and listen here and then go back to, you know, to see the work. And obviously it's also an archive which afterwards exists. And as a curator, I'm very concerned and interested in this idea of what is memory and how can we, you know, archive an exhibition. Because an exhibition, it's a very fragile medium, the medium I'm working with. It's basically there and then it's gone. And what do you have? You have a catalog, you sometimes have a few photographs, installation shots, sometimes it's a small film, you know, that's all, and then the show tours, but then one day it's dispersed again, and it's never reunited in this kind of constellation. It really is a very, in this sense, a medium with a limited lifespan. So the idea is that through this oral history, basically through these interviews, it's a possibility to make a portrait of the exhibition and have a memory. It's like a time capsule. One will be able in 20 years or 50 years to revisit this Biennale through all these testimonies. It's obviously also interesting because what happens is that many of these conversations start to talk to each other. Because, I mean, as I ask the questions very often, I'm inspired by one conversation to ask a next question. So it travels through these. And one could obviously also imagine, and that's the whole digital realm, that in the future, these interviews start to talk to each other. And that's our second experiment here. We're basically showing in the, together with the Institute for the 21st Century, who produced this with Karen Mata and Bettina Korek, we're showing in the Giardini, in the main pavilion there, the Cedric Price archive. And these are all the films, the interviews I've ever filmed of Cedric Price. That's more than 20 hours. And it was a collaboration with the Karlsruhe University, the Hochschule there, with Wilfried Kühn and Markus Miesen, the two architects, and of course Armin Linke, the Italian photographer and artist, who is a professor there. And so they basically started to tag with the students my Cedric Price interview according to all kinds of criteria. His famous project, the Pop-Up Parliament, the Farm Palace, the Pottery Think Belt, time in architecture, his connection to artists, his white room, his office. You can have dozens and dozens of different points. Whenever you want to know something, you can basically give it in, and then all the fragments, whenever I've interviewed Cedric and he's mentioned that, pop up. And that's obviously a great potential for the future also, which made me aware that there's a possibility. Having so far I've only used the text, how could one use those videos of the interviews, and maybe have in the future these different people in the archive really talk to each other, a little bit like in a Dostoevsky novel, no? So it would become a real polyphony. Yes, I mean, it's a permanent learning. You know, for me, it's always, I mean, this idea, you know, you're a student and then you learn it, and at a certain moment you no longer are a student. And I think my idea has always been to be a student for my whole life, to always learn. I'm obsessed by learning. And that's what this interview project is about. It is about learning every day. And whenever I do an interview, I read all the books, you know, of the person I interview. It's a discipline to read. And it's full of surprises. I mean, the thing is, one of the great surprises here in Venice, one of the really consistent things which always came back is this new obsession for gardens. Because we have not only landscape architects, but more and more artists and architects who really feel that there is a very important thing about gardens for the 21st century. To read buildings as gardens, inside gardens, outside gardens, 21st century garden. I mean, Alexander Kluge says the internet is a garden. So gardens is definitely a very strong point, I think, right now. I think another aspect which I think is important is archives. I mean, surprising. What was surprising? Surprising is maybe also that there were not many manifestos. I always ask, you know, what are the manifestos for the 21st century? And among the 47 interviews we've had here, there were only about 5 or 6 manifesto. I mean, we started with Andrea Branzi, and he presents in the catalogue one of the few manifestos. And then there were several other architects, but only about 5 who had a manifesto. And most architects don't. So that might lead to something. Artist Tino Segal always says that maybe manifestos are very much a 20th century thing, and that maybe the 21st century is more a conversation. So maybe this whole idea of an infinite conversation is the manifesto for the 21st century. What else? Surprising. When it's always about surprise. My hero Diaghilev, who is the great visionary of the Russian ballet. He was a curator in 1905-06, and then in 1909 founded the Russian ballet. And he is really one of my, you know, big inspirations to bring all the disciplines together, because through ballet he brought together architecture, art, stage design. Artists like Picasso, Braque, or Goncharova did his stage designs. Stravinsky would do the sound, would be the composer, and then he had the greatest dancers and choreographers. And I try in a similar way. It's an attempt through my medium, which is the exhibition, to bring all the disciplines together. And Diaghilev and Cocteau had once this conversation where one told the other, étonnez-moi. And I think this whole interview, it's about the étonnez-moi. So it's difficult to say what was the biggest surprise. It's about a permanent étonnez-moi. Étonnez-moi is a daily practice.